Hello everyone, it's Brett here, Lionheart84, and I'll just sort of quickly look at 2 or 3 of my very sickly tropicals that I've moved outside for a few days, as we're allegedly going to have a mild spell. Should be no lower than sort of 6 or 7 degrees centigrade at night, so about 42 to 45 Fahrenheit, and daytime temperatures are going to be between 10 and 15 centigrade, which is sort of somewhere between 50 and about 57 Fahrenheit, so they should be safe outside, although I'll keep a close eye on the weather. Now what we're looking at here is a couple of my smaller guavas, and my Lily Pilly and my Cherry of the Rio Grande, all of which have really suffered badly over winter in the kitchen. They don't like the dry atmosphere, they don't like the lack of light. Although these aren't necessarily the worst looking guavas, these are just the ones that I've decided to bring out because they're in small pots. So basically this is a seed growing pink guava, this one, and I've cut it back heavily since I bought it outside, because these branches were 2 or 3 feet long, and all completely died back at the tips and defoliated. If you look at this closely, you can also see it's got the same scale insects that the rose apple had on it. You can actually just pick those off. There are very few on the plant, so the next day or two when I've got time, I'll simply pick them off. The plant's also been suffering from the same damage to the leaves from thrips that the rose apple had. You can rub them off, you can wash them off. However, it is shooting out all over the place, so I don't think this plant's at any risk from suffering any long-term issues. I think it'll rejuvenate nicely this summer, and the whole idea is obviously leaving it out in the rain. I hope it's going to do it some good. The Lily Pilly as well, again, has had some issues with, I can see thrips on the back of that leaf. You can see the damage it's caused to the leaves, but it's not, again, not serious. This will bounce back. This hasn't defoliated as bad as some of the other plants, and it's actually showing signs, as far as I can see, of new spring growth, and I'm hoping it's going to fill out a little bit and branch from some of these lower stems. It did flower for me last summer, had a few flowers on it for the first time ever. Nothing set. I don't think it's big enough, and although they are meant to be self-fertile, it would probably benefit me to have 2 in flower, so I'm hoping that eventually my seedling ones will get to a flowering size, and I'll have 2 or 3 that I'll better put together to help with cross-pollination. But apart from the thrip issue, which you can just wash off or rub off, and again I'm hoping that the rain and the cold outside will get rid of them. There's another unnamed guava here, one that I did buy originally from Sutton's. Again, it's got the odd scale insect on it. Again, it's got thrips on the back of the leaves. They particularly seem to like guavas, and again I've had to cut it back quite hard. Probably let it get too dry in the winter, but I didn't want to risk root issues, so I tend to leave them on the dry side, but you do lose foliage, but that's also because of the low light levels. And finally, my Cherry of the Rio Grande, which virtually seems to be completely deciduous here in our climate, or at least it is when it's in my kitchen. I have had a fair bit of tip die back, which I've trimmed off, but you can probably see, I think you can probably see if we look closely, that there's plenty of new shoots coming out. These are actually quite hardy. They're said to stand light frosts, but as they're impossible to buy here, the last thing I'd want to do is risk this one outside in cold weather and lose it. But I'm fairly sure from looking at it that it's going to make a fairly rapid recovery and be fully covered in leaves by about sort of May. I'm going to leave it outside as long as the weather stays mild out in the rain, because I think it'll rejuvenate much better. Although if we get any very cold winds, obviously I'll look at the issue there and just make sure it's not exposed too much. So that's my Cherry of the Rio Grande. That's Eugenia aggregata. Never flowered or fruited for me, it's probably too small. Next to it I've got another guava which has overwintered somewhat better. It's another one that I grew from seeds from fresh pink fruits that I bought. This one has got a few thrips on the leaves, but it's a bigger, much tougher plant, and they haven't really affected the leaves much, but you can see the quantity on the back there, so I'm definitely going to have to wash those all off and deal with them. And finally, I've also got my larger white sapote outside, which interestingly still has a few fruits on it. It's starting to put out some new growth on some of the stems, so I thought this would benefit from being outside. They are fairly hardy, about the same hardiness level as citrus. I certainly wouldn't expose to frosts because that would be a big mistake. More fruits there. I don't think any of these will hold. I would expect in the next 3 or 4 weeks they'll all fall off, but if I could get one to hold, and if it even grew to a couple of inches, it would be very interesting. Obviously the bulk of the tropicals I've had to leave inside because they're too big to keep moving in and out. It's a major task. It takes me 2 or 3 hours, and I know that as we're only sort of in the getting into the 3rd week of March, that well, approaching the 4th week of March actually, that we're bound to get more cold weather and frosts in the next 2 or 3 weeks. In fact, I've heard on the long-term weather forecast that it's going to get cold again, so they can't be risked outside permanently, but I'm hoping if we get some fair bit of rain in the next week or so that they're going to benefit from it. So that's just a quick look at a few of my small tropicals that I've brought outside for hopefully some therapy, rain therapy and fresh air and a lot more light, and it'll help them regenerate quicker. Thanks for watching that video, much appreciate it. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, you can share the video for anyone you think might be interested, and remember to click on the bell if you like updates on my new videos as I release them. I'll catch up with you on the next video. Brett out for now.